Long-distance coach company Intercape has won another round in its long legal battle to force the state to act to protect the company, its drivers and passengers against the violent attacks and intimidation. The High Court has sent the Transport Minister, Eastern Cape Transport MEC and police back to the drawing board after their plan to protect long-distance bus operators besieged by taxi organisations in the province was found wanting. To get more reaction on this, we are joined by Eastern Cape Transport spokesperson Unathi Binqose. Unathi, I appreciate your time this afternoon. Just give us some insight into the reasons, the main reasons behind that High Court's decision to send that trio back to the drawing board regarding the issue, or rather the complaints by the Intercape bus company.
Let me first register an apology for the MEC who was supposed to be the one conducting this interview, but because of prior commitments, unfortunately, couldn't make it. But attending to your question, we have received the ruling. And look, we are not entirely opposed to it because it talks exactly to what we as the Department of Transport in the province are about. It is about the safety of all road users who enter into our province, whether that transport service they are using is public transport or private transport. So we, in that regard, that ruling is in line with what we are about. And the question is on whether we should specifically look at certain companies or not. When it comes to that, we are still taking a thorough look at that ruling, and in due time we'll be able to respond to the court, because we are allowed time up until the first or the second week of July. So our legal team is looking at that, and the MEC is going to consult with them as to what is the next plan of action. But we are not opposed to the fact that those who are entering our roads should be safe, whether they are using private transport or public transport. It's just this question of a specific company.
Unathi, you suggest that you're not opposed, but it's been 9 months since that initial ruling by the courts compelling you to act. And 9 months later, you do not have a position. You have now been, in fact, you've made submissions which the court deemed were unsatisfactory.
Look, on our side, we have seen progress in what we've implemented, because the attacks on buses, not just Intercape, but buses in general, have declined from very high double digits figures to single digits now, since we've implemented this plan, the plan that the court says it needs to be revised. However, they've allowed us time up until July to submit whether we would want to oppose that in terms of appeal or not. So we still have that room to maneuver, and in due time we'll decide on whether we feel what we have implemented that has reduced the attacks from high double-digit numbers to single digits in terms of attacks is adequate or not. Remember, we have competing interests, really. When it comes to the police, we have to take care of civilians and communities as well. So we feel like what has been done has been fairly good, but whether it can be bettered or not, our legal team is going to advise us on that, and we'll see what next step of action we'll take. But I want to register to you that there has been some progress that we've seen in terms of the reduction of the number of attacks on public transport.
So let's talk about Intercape as a bus company. Are they being singled out in these attacks? Is that the reason that they are specifically driving this agenda with the courts? Well,
not according to the statistics on the ground. These attacks are certainly not targeted at a specific bus company. That is what we are seeing on the ground. We've seen some other bus companies being attacked as well. However, due to the sheer volume of Intercape buses that are operating within the province, it is likely that they will have higher numbers of those that have been attacked. But we are not getting a sense that they are specifically targeted at Intercape, because there will be other bus companies that can come forward and say they have also been under attack. And like I said, we've seen a decline in those attacks from what we had seen in the last festive season into the previous festive season, and Easter weekend that we've just passed. So we've seen a gradual decline in that. And it's not by miracle. It is down to the work that we've put on the ground in terms of the plan that we had set out to reduce these attacks, if not completely eliminating them.
Well, the court still find that your efforts are inadequate. Talk to us about what efforts you've made, firstly, and secondly, where those deficiencies have been highlighted by the courts.
What the courts have advocated for is for the visibility of police officers and traffic officers where these buses are loading. And of course, a higher visibility of police and generally law enforcement officers on the routes and hotspot areas that have been identified. And we feel like within the limited resources that we have managed to do that, hence the decline I've referred to previously. We have seen a gradual decline, and it is down to these efforts that we've put in place, which the courts possibly feel we can do a bit better. But we may, if the decision is that we appeal, advance to the court as to why what we have done has been to a degree adequate in terms of reducing the numbers and possibly highlight the stretched resources that we have. I mean, we are not just about the safety of road users only. We have to respond to what is happening in our communities as well. However, a decision on that has not been taken as yet.
So what is your gauge of satisfactory? Because you seem convinced, contrary to what the courts are saying, that the work that you've done suffices. Let's talk numbers. Right, you've talked about a decline, and you feel that that decline or the reduction in those numbers is satisfactory. What are those numbers looking like?
It is worth noting that what the court has decided in this particular case is not final. It is an interim. They are saying to us, come back to us with reasons as to why we should not make this ruling permanent. And we are prepared to advance those reasons. However, I am saying to you, we've managed to reduce the numbers from very high double digits to very low. How
high? Let's talk about specifics. I mean, at the moment we seem to be meandering. I'd imagine that if you've just come out of court, then you would know that you were at 40% and you've come down to 15% or whatever those numbers are. Can you give us specifics?
All right, I won't go into percentages. I'll give you the exact numbers.
Yeah.
There are attacks within the festive season of 2022, for instance. We were touching at over 50 attacks in a period of 3 months within the province. And that has cut down to single digits, up as high as 9 now in terms of attacks in a period of 3 months. For us, that is a market decline in terms of the attacks. And like I said, it's not due to a miracle. It's due to the work that we've put on the ground. Talking to taxi operators as well, and of course deploying law enforcement officers for the safety of not just the bus company and its drivers, but for the safety of the commuters who are the citizens of this country.
Okay, so obviously there's been some progress in that regard. I mean, it's a massive reduction. Those are the numbers that you speak of. But let's talk to the actual problem. So what you've done is you've assisted, I suppose, in creating a presence of police officers. But the challenge arises, certainly with the taxi operators themselves. How are you dealing with that and the conflict that exists?
Look, we are meeting with just about every stakeholder in the public transport industry and the transport industry in general, because what the bus company is encountering is a similar problem that trucking companies are encountering. And we are saying to them, we are talking to those who are deemed as instigators and are not owning up to those attacks, because in the many engagements that we've had with them, and never have they owned up and said, we are behind these attacks. They've always blamed a third force, and we trust the courts to be able to get to the bottom of this and get those who are behind these attacks to account.
Well, at the moment, there is a hitman that's been arrested for the murder of a bus driver. Are you familiar with that? And is this likely to shed more light on what's transpired?
Look, we cannot discard anything. Whoever gets arrested for any matter, whether it's taxi related, public transport related or not, we are always happy when someone gets arrested for a crime as serious as murder, and we're hoping that maybe it will help reveal a lot in what is happening within the province, because we've seen a lot of hits, both on taxi operators and even individuals. I mean, those things have been well documented in this province, and we are doing everything in our power as the government of the Eastern Cape to end this scourge of hits that are becoming prominent in this province of ours.
Parliament has been concerned about the implications that these hits, or certainly the lack of safety for citizens as they travel and holidaymakers, on the implications that it has on tourism. Do you feel that the measures that you've put in place, that reduction, as you say, from 50 odd, I think you mentioned, to a single-digit number, is sending the right messages and will not impact tourism?
We want to assure those who wish to travel to the Eastern Cape that the government of the Eastern Cape is doing everything in its power to ensure the safety of its citizens and the safety of its visitors. I mean, we've got a lot to offer as the province towards tourists, and they are more than welcome in this province, and we will bend over backwards to ensure their safety without neglecting the safety of those who are residents of this province.
Unathi Binqose, Eastern Cape Transport spokesperson, appreciate your time this afternoon.